Good morning, my name is Pretorius. I work as a management consultant in the areas of strategy and strategy implementation. I also work as a part of the virtual faculty at the University of Stellenbosch Business School. I've been asked to do a review on this book, The Masters of Management. The subtitle of the book is How the Business Gurus and their Ideas Have Changed the World for Better and for Worse. Essentially what the author Adrian Wooldridge does in the book is he does a quick overview of the last 40 years of management. He is a journalist, so it's a fairly scathing attack on the management industry. He reviews what some of the global trends are, the impact they have on organizations, and then ultimately on the workers within the organization. So Adrian is a journalist with the Economist. As a matter of fact, he's the management editor of the Economist. His overall argument is firstly that management gurus, or the theories then, are really the power behind the thrones. So the idea is that the management gurus should not be in the limelight. They're really the players behind those that are in the limelight. Having said that, the management theory is immature, according to Mr. Wooldridge. The management theory is an immature discipline, unusually open to charlatans and congenitally prone to fads. The last argument that he bases his book on is that management theory also contains a great deal of good, and that the world is actually much better as a result of what's happening in the management industry. So there are 5 parts essentially to the book. In the first part, how it works, he gives a bit of contextual background to what the management industry is about. In the second part, he talks about the prophets and the evangelists. He really takes a very high-level overview of who are the key players in the industry. He talks about the 3 management revolutions. From there on, he says, well, what is the impact of that on organizations? So he talks about the debates. And then lastly, the workers of the world. The management, or how it works, the management theory industry, he says that essentially constructing management theory and then selling it is really at the heart of the management industry. The management industry consists of 3 parts: business schools, management consulting business, and then the so-called guru business. The need for the management industry, according to him, companies everywhere are going through more and more change, greater and greater spurts of growth, more so than ever before. Within that, there's a paradox, he says, that even though management theory matters, because management matters, the discipline is very far from respectable. And essentially that the management industry is fueled by either fear or greed. So in terms of the business schools, he says that business schools are responsible for developing the intellectual machinery of machinery capitalism, as well as the training those people that work in this industry. Then from there on, he talks about this fad in progress. And even though re-engineering and lean manufacturing added a lot of value to the industry, he's also saying that pushing that too far resulted in things like corporate anorexia, the catastrophic collapse of trust in organizations, and that the industry then generally became corrupted by greed. Now, unfortunately, he also now labels corporate social responsibility as the latest fad, and he sees it. He sees it in the same light as well. CSR is nothing more than a polite mask that companies put on smart decisions. Management taking money out of shareholders' pockets for their own egos. He then goes on and he talks about the prophets and the evangelists. And in his mind, Peter Drucker is really the guru's guru. He talks firstly about the road leading up to Drucker, and essentially it was Taylor, and everything revolved around the scientific theory and rational management. 3 things that he really highlights in Drucker's ability to bridge this gap is about the comments that he made around companies have a social dimension as well as an economic purpose. So it's not just about the economic purpose as what it has been up to that point. And then the other thing also, he says that often people have this perception of Drucker as being soft and woolly, but a lot of what he did was actually around management by objectives, and which is quite a hard science. Tom Peters, he reckons that Tom Peters is really he was a marketing guru, and the best thing that Tom Peters did was to put management on the map. Then from there on, he talks about the gurus, and he's got the 3 categories. He talks about the superstar professors, people like Roosevelt Moss Cantor, Jim Collins, and then the journo gurus, Tom Friedman, Malcolm Gladwell, and he talks about the academic entrepreneurs from the wrong side of the track, like Howard Gardner, just from the wrong business schools in his mind. And essentially, he just says that Tom Friedman, the value that he added was around technological innovation and then financial regulation. Malcolm Gladwell also, according to him, the books that Gladwell wrote, Tipping Point, Blink, and Outliers, I think his fourth one was What the Cat Saw. He says that he believes that Tipping Point and Blink were value-adding books, but then after that, Gladwell just fell into the trap of making money. The fourth one that he talks about is Christopher Anderson, The Long Tail, and essentially what he highlights is just that what Anderson talks about is the rise of the emerging markets, and that's certainly something that Wooldridge also highlights in his writings. The professors as prophets, the one that I wasn't too familiar with is Robert Reich. He was a contemporary and actually worked with Bill Clinton as well. And you can see some of the comments that Reich made. I think some of the issue that I really enjoyed was the issue around turbocharged capitalism is at the same time both generating profound social problems and using its political muscle to prevent these problems from being solved. Richard Florida, essentially talking about the creative class, and according to Wooldridge, he doesn't really add much more value as what Drucker did when he spoke about the knowledge worker. Howard Gardner spoke about the multiple intelligences, and very much like with Gladwell, Wooldridge's opinion is that he added value when he highlighted the difference between the different intelligences, but then after that, Gardner also fell into the trap of trying to make more money. The key lessons, according to Wooldridge, from these insurgents, as he calls them, the management profession's immaturity, but also its vitality. He compares it to economics, where he says that economics is a fairly closed system. The management industry is a lot more open to new ideas, but with that comes a lot of faddishness and doubt about the credibility of the industry. The third part then is about rethinking the company, the rise of entrepreneurship and innovation, and then the world turned upside down, where he essentially talks about the rise of the emerging markets. He talks about the shift from the old traditional vertical integrated companies. He uses Shell as an example, where you walk into the front door and it's huge marble entrance halls with a vision and value statement, and everybody wears a tie, as compared to Google, where I'm sure you've all seen the latest movie on Google. Can't remember what it's called, but very much different worlds and different environments. And he talks about who killed Alfred Sloan. In other words, the traditional rational model as initially started off by Taylor. And he says things like the lean production, managers trying to make money out of and perks out of the shareholders rather than focusing on what they should be focusing on. The rise of intrapreneurs and cross-functional teams. And then, as opposed to that, he talks about the hybrid companies. One of them is what he labels as the connected corporations. The other organizations or clusters of organizations that he talks about or the rising type of organizations. The one is the collaborative consumption organization. He talks about the building blocks of the new organizations, specifically the core competencies. In terms of renewal, he says that there's a greater and greater need for organizations to become aware of what's happening in the environment and to renew from within. He talks about networking as well, but specifically the importance of networking internally in the organization. He talks about the importance of cultures and values, and he says that in the midst of all this change, the only real anchor that people will have in organization is a common sense of purpose. The fault lines that he identified with this new model is that there's a huge reliance on the leader, and if something happens to the leader, it could result in the demise of the organization. As companies grow more and more complicated, the job of the manager becomes a lot vaguer, and it comes with its consequences. And then the last one, because of this flexibility, there's increasingly so a need and a greater dependency on trust and self-discipline. He then spends quite a bit of time talking about entrepreneurship and the importance of that. The interesting thing, just the last third point there, the support of powerful institutions. He talks there specifically about how business schools have shifted their curriculum to focus much more on entrepreneurship rather than general management. And then the last one is also that governments are competing more and more in getting this culture of entrepreneurship going. He talks about a couple of entrepreneurship myths. Then a very interesting part is where he talks about frugal innovation, where the traditional business model just doesn't work anymore, where there's a need to produce things simpler but not necessarily inferior, with the idea of reducing costs, that the focus is much more on pull rather than a traditional push, and then also about how one can use mass production in new and unexpected areas. And then he talks about the Chinese contribution, the biggest two issues really being the power of networks, and then the second one is around what they term as bandit or guerrilla innovation. Good. The last, or the fourth bit is about the great debates. He talks about the knowledge, learning, and innovation, spends quite a bit of time on, the rise of the knowledge workers and how difficult it is to manage the clevers. He has quite a unique approach in how one should manage the clevers. He says it's about applying a light touch, pointing the clevers in the right direction, and then allowing them to decide on the route. It's about massaging their egos, and you need to use a thief to catch a thief, and then treat them like precocious children. If you want to create a culture of innovation in an organization, then it really is to try and get as many innovative ideas as possible. The second school of thought around innovation is to look outside the borders of the organization, and he quotes Prahalad with co-creation, using the customer to co-create products. He suggests three propositions. Firstly, is that successful strategies are based on platforms rather than products. Again, like we said earlier, it's more about the pull strategies rather than the push strategies. And that strategy need to bubble up from the bottom up. Not radically new. I think we're all very familiar with most of this. He talks quite a bit of globalization. And I think he's obviously a seasoned traveler, understands what happens across the world. From there, the other part that he talks about is, so if you consider all these things happening in the organization, what is the impact of that in organizations, and then in particular in the boardroom. And he says the four great debates happening in organization is firstly the decision about what are companies for. Is it essentially to enrich shareholders, or is it to please the stakeholders? The conclusion that he comes to that it is not just about the shareholders, it is actually about pleasing the stakeholders, irrespective of what he said earlier about corporate social responsibility. And then also the last one, and then is the point that Wilhelmina alluded to earlier when she started off, the debate between leadership and management. We look then at ultimately what is the impact of all of this on the workers of the world. The Shamrock organization, he describes as there being a core in the organization, a fairly small core that will work 3 times as hard or double as hard as what they have before, and being rewarded 3 times as much as what they have before, and that you would have freelance workers or associates coming in, doing specialist jobs, and then moving on again. Then he says, as a result of that, there is the dark side of all these things and how it impacts on people. He talks about the animal farm syndrome, those people that work so hard. And then he spends quite a bit of time talking about, he refers to it as a battle for brain power, the war for talent, and I think we all know that there's an increasing need and increasing demand for how we manage our talent. He talks about managing yourself. He really regards Peter Drucker very highly, and a lot of what he talks about in managing yourself is based on Peter Drucker's views on the importance of managing yourself. We're really just scratching the surface. It is nice, light entertainment. It gives you a general overview of what's happening or what has happened in the world of management over the last 30 to 40 years, but it doesn't really give great insights. That's my opinion, as I said, from my worldview. Thank you very much.